well, I didn't expect to really do this because I literally hadn't had time and everything's been busy, but I thought, you know, what the heck, we'll do it anyway. So, my theme this month is mushrooms. I've seen a lot of inspiration. I think it's Plant Based Bride that I really got the inspiration from. She did mushrooms and fairies. So I thought, you know what, it'd be nice to do some mushrooms. And even better, I actually have a new kind of paint to try. So I kind of swatch tested it a little bit in the back of my bullet journal to make sure it wouldn't bleed through very much, and thankfully it didn't. So I get to use it. So the paint I'm using today is called gouache, and it's supposed to react similar to watercolors, give it a bit more of a matte finish, and I'm kind of excited to try it. I wasn't sure what the result would be, and I decided I'd just go with very flat colour for this and just add in very quick shading with the pen that I'm going to use, just because I am very limited on time. So you can also tell that because it does look a bit messy. At least in my mind it looks a bit messy, but then I remember that I'm a really messy painter at the best of times. I decided also with November, the wording, I'd just do simple bubble writing because, you know, we got to go back to the 90s sometime, and I'd do it kind of like a poisonous type of mushroom, so like red with white dots, which actually kind of worked well and kind of didn't work well. The paint I used, because it's a flat colour, it was very dark. I should have really lightened it, but as I said, I just literally wanted to test these out, see how they worked, and they were fine. But maybe I'm just used to working with watercolours now because I found it very difficult to control the flow of paint. It was a bit thick because these are jelly gouaches, and I wasn't really watering it down because I tend to, with especially watercolours, not water them down very much because I wanted a rich jewel like colour. I tend to go for that. I very rarely go for very watery colours. So with the gouache, I wasn't really watering it down any at all, and it was very difficult because it was very, very thick. I think it'd be great with a thicker paintbrush, and doing that would be a lot thicker. And, you know, actually, it's great. So, this is another kind of thing to add to my repertoire, I suppose, and you'll probably see a lot more gouache in the next coming months as I try and get used to it and that kind of jazz. So as we can see, I'm doing my usual where I'm using a pen to go over the lettering, and I really don't suggest doing that because I keep forgetting, and then I use my really good pens, and then I kind of wreck my pens because the paint kind of wrecks the nibs. I may have to buy some new pens at the end of this. I can never remember which way around I'm supposed to do it, whether I do it with the pen first and then paint in the outlines, because I'm only doing flat paint or flat lay paint. I'm not really doing any kind of extra stuff, but apparently I can never remember, so I did it this way around, and I think it's the other way around. Also, I noticed a really funny mistake that I didn't even notice for a good 5 minutes. Well, I say 5 minutes. It wasn't until I was suddenly like, what's that on my arm? That I realised somehow I'd put my arm in my paints. Yep, there it is. Yep, had to stop the recording because I had to clean up the mess that I'd made all on my arm, had to change my jumper, wipe down the table. As you can see, there's a piece of kitchen towel because I was like, oh, I made that wet too. Yay. Honestly, I am so messy. At least now I suppose the desk is christened. I'll go with christened because it wasn't like that before. Well. Anyway, we've moved on to the next page, and that is my usual to be read page and red page. And I've kind of changed things up a little bit. You won't be able to tell because you're just seeing me set this up, but I have decided that as I'm quite a visual person, I'm a kinetic dyslexic, probably why I'm so messy, and I'll learn better with my hands or uh, a visual approach. So this is why I have a bullet journal, because I can visually see what I'm doing. So instead of just writing the names of the books that I'm going to read for the month, which will be on the left hand side, I've got little book covers printed. I quite often have a TBR pile that I want to read over the month, and I collect that for the next month. And it's kind of fun because it does mean that once I finish reading one, I can go straight to the other, especially if I'm reading sequels. I really love that. And I thought it'd be really nice actually using more space, because there have been some months this year where, actually, confession, that I didn't use my bullet journal. I forgot, and I have no notion as to what I've read, which is really frustrating because I have a goal of 100 books and I'm sure I've missed a good 15 to 20 books. But at least with the page space, I can take it up, I can visually look at it, and I can remember much easier what happened in the book. So I've decided to do that, and I might just show you at the end of this month, because this is the first month I've decided to do that, that I'll run through it so you can see how I did and see if you think it makes any difference. And I'm going to be doing the same with the red as well. I decided to keep with a jewel-like theme with the mushrooms. As you can tell, I don't really do subtlety very well, hence the flat lay paint rather than doing a lot of shading. And it's nice to really test these squash, not watercolour. It was really nice to try and test them out, see how they go, and they dry really nicely. It does show quite a lot of brush strokes, so I've got to kind of get used to that. So this is a really nice way of testing things out. I'm not a huge fan of the yellow I used on this though, because I used a darker yellow on the other one, but I wanted to again see how this yellow would work. I think it's a lemon yellow. I wasn't a fan of it, so I think I did manage to darken it a little bit. In fact, I think this might be my favourite page. This also happens to be the last page I did, because I actually did it all out of sequential order. I tend to do it in sequential order more often than not, but I decided to do, again, something different, keep it all different, but you're seeing it in sequential order. It's always the way with me as well. By the time I get to the last bit, I've suddenly realised what I want to do, because as usual, I don't plan. And I really should. Well, I did kind of plan. I knew what I wanted. I just didn't do any swatching. I just randomly picked. And sometimes it's fun to do that. And maybe next month is December, so I might try doing like a winter wonderland, seeing how that goes and having a distinct pre-planned palette. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, as usual, I've decided to add a little bit of pop by using metallic marker, and this actually has worked really well over the gouache paint. I really like it. It just adds a little je ne sais quoi to it, so to speak, and it can hide a multitude of sins. Okay, I have quite a lot of sins when it comes to this particular bullet journal setup, because I literally did this like last second, and as I said before, I wasn't planning on it, but I thought, you know what, I actually have some time. Some things cleared up quicker than I thought it would, and I was like, do you know what, let's do it. I haven't done a recording in ages. And although I am recording this a little late into the month, I'm still managing it, so to speak, and I admit it keeps me more accountable, because again, as I totally forgot that I needed to do a setup, somehow October just flew by, and usually I do spend from the beginning of the month actually thinking and planning what I want to do. I do actually do that bit quite often, and I just haven't over the last couple of months. That's why you haven't seen me, other than the fact that I've been away a lot, and it's nice to be accountable and actually have that chance to do something and practice art. I've forgotten how much that I enjoy doing the bullet journal, hence why I do this, and it does give a good feeling of satisfaction, especially as, for once in my life as well, I've been very bad at tracking. If you see the rest of my bullet journal, which I will do a flip through at some point fairly soon, because I'm actually switching bullet journals and I've got a new one. And I don't tend to track things, so this segues really nicely into what you're seeing now, in fact, because this is my tracking page, my double spread. So as usual, on the right hand side is my tracking for audiobooks I listen to, and I count in the audio or listening to tracking anything that is a podcast that I listen to, or I have been listening to, oddly, YouTube. YouTube seems to have a couple of really good audiobooks or things that I would class as an audiobook type rather than a video type. So I do count those as well as just ordinary audiobooks, which is quite nice. And on the other side, which you can't see quite yet, is of course my physical reading tracking page, and that again counts for anything that I've read that is an ebook or as just a physical book. And I've changed this up quite a lot. So as you can see, I'm actually just drawing over the outline that I've already drawn in pen, because instead of having square boxes to fill in for every single day, which I really wasn't doing because I think it was a little bit on the boring side for me, I decided instead do a colouring page, so to speak. So as you can see really clearly on the right page, I've already filled all the numbers in, and it's a bit random where the numbers are. Some bits I was like, oh, do I need to? Other bits I was like, okay, that's a great bit. I had to get 30 in and I'd run out of space really. But again, I'm really excited to be filling this out, and it's a great thing to do rather than just having boring kind of tracking squares. They're just a little bit too boring for me. And it does mean I get to practice my colouring skills, which are truly atrocious, because if you can tell from most of my bullet journals, I just do flat lay, and I really want to get back into doing contrast shadowing, actually doing proper painting, colouring, whatever it is I want to do. So although the rest of this spread is going to be in gouache, this colouring bit, or tracking I should say, is going to be mostly pencil, just because that's a little easier to do day by day. I could do it in gouache. I mean, if I have the gouache out, I'm going to certainly do it in gouache. So it just gives me an incentive to go and track what I'm doing. And weirdly, I actually did manage it back in October, which is where I decided to make that decision. So I'm really loving the fact that I made that change. It's so much better. I love it. And of course, now I'm at that stage of the year where I kind of have a look at what I'm doing in my bullet journal and see if I want to make any changes. And yes, I'm going to be making quite a few changes in the next bullet journal. I want to save most of the changes for the next one, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Again, I might just do a quick run through when I've actually got it all set up, because it takes a long time, so I don't really want to record that. You'll find it very boring because it's so many different spreads, but I will be doing a walkthrough as soon as it's all set up, ready for the new year. And I'll probably walk through how I'm going to be reading next year. I've decided to mix things up, and I've got some new reading goals, which I like to have because I read an awful lot, and I don't want to just flim-flam and just flail around just reading random stuff. I like to educate myself, and I've had some really great books again this year. And if I hadn't got those reading goals, especially like the Sugar Pop Challenge, I definitely wouldn't have read them, because otherwise I'll just sit in my same old genre favourites. Like sci-fi and fantasy, I read this fantastic one called Jules: A Secret History. Only like in the last couple of days I finished reading it. It was absolutely fascinating, and I really enjoyed it enough that I'm going to get a copy of it. There's no e-copy because I would have just bought that immediately, so I'm going to have a physical copy of it, and it's something I'm definitely going to go back to again, especially if I'm going to go look at different jewelry stores and ask them very odd questions, so it should be a lot of fun. Anyway, I should really talk about the last page that I'm doing. This, of course, is my usual book of the month. This actually is the first page I started using the gouache with, so I actually started the tracking page first because that was a simple line drawing and I could do that quickly. I had time to just do that. Now I'm painting, and I was using a very odd brush. I don't think I'm going to use those again. They weren't great to use, but I just love the vibrancy and the colour of the flat lay. I just love it, and I definitely want to use these again. We'll see how it all goes. I think I've got a distinct idea for next month, and it won't be, I don't think, no, I'm fairly certain it's not going to be any kind of paint or gouache. We'll have to see. I've got a cool idea, hopefully. But I really like the fact that I decided to go with really nice bright jewel colours, especially as it's that time of year where it's dark and depressing. And this kind of hopefully will uplift my spirits whenever I look at it. I just gotta find a book of the month. I'm really glad actually that I did decide to record this in the end. Okay, Mum also made me feel incredibly guilty. Thanks, Mum. Thanks for the guilt. But actually, it felt pretty good to get it recorded, and so I can see the silly things that have happened. Honestly, you could. The drama of painting. You can't fake putting your arm in the paint, can you really? I mean, how exciting is that? Anyway, so I'm kind of really glad that it turned out the way it did in some ways. I really need to practice though painting, and I might try just some ordinary painting of them in my bullet journal, because that's the other thing. I think that's the other goal really that I have for next year. I'm already on goals for next year, even though it's only November. But was it, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail? And I really want to kind of up my game a little bit next year, maybe actually try some proper painting, or finish some of the paintings I actually have, because I do actually have a couple. But again, I tend to do a lot of flat lay. Maybe I'll practice non-flat lay. Oh, actually, as you can see, I was going to say, I was painting the stalagmites at the bottom, and as you can see, the paint's gone a little bit weird, and that's because I used water, so the right hand side looks a little bit lighter to the other side, because I had a bit too much water on my brush before I dipped it into the paint. So it does kind of work like watercolour a little bit, and I kind of didn't want it that pale, but it works fine because we're going to pretend that stalactite was going in a different direction. It didn't want to be dark blue. And once again, I'm going over with my pens, my poor pens. I need to check that they're okay from the last of it, because they gave out and I had to switch pens. Yeah, just don't write over it. But I did want this kind of outline to make it pop. I did debate about outlining it in paint, but my hand is not steady at all. I don't think I could do that very well. And I kind of like the fact that weird stalagmites are going to be sitting on top of the book of the month. I should have really done them the other way around in some respects, but actually I quite like the fact that they're sitting on it. Technically, the page is supposed to be like with different colours in the background, so like the mushrooms are actually sitting on colour, and I debated about whether I should paint it in, and then I was like, no, I think I should leave it because my hand really isn't steady. But what I'll probably do, probably when you're not looking, is I'll probably end up coloring that in pencil at some point, but not going to be anytime soon. So the good news is we are at the end, and we are going to be, oh, hold on, I decided to put metallic in, by the way, over the paint here as well. Really like that. I really like that colour. And we are basically at the end of the painting, hopefully, and we can go through what it all looks like from the beginning. So here is the flip through of my November reading bullet journal. So here we go. So we have, of course, my title page with the messy paint, because that was fun. It'll make me smile forevermore. Then we have my TBR unread page, which has to be my favourite page, worked really well with that. Then we have my tracking page, which I'm really pleased with. I'm really excited to colour it in. And of course, my book of the month. And there we have it. Thank you very much for listening and watching my November bullet journal for this month. Hopefully, again, this has inspired you. And I'm excited that I've got a good plan for next month, and fingers crossed I'll actually manage to record it and upload it. I'll see you in the next video, so bye for now.